Hi and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to turn decimals into fractions. So if you already know how to say your decimals the proper way, then this is going to be so easy for you. If you don't really remember, I will help you. So our first one is going to be this number. Now, some people would call this number 0.26, and that's okay. But if you remember learning how to properly say your numbers, you would say 26 hundredths. So if you can say that, all you have to do is write it. Watch. 26 hundredths. That is all you have to do to turn your decimal into a fraction. If you didn't know how to properly say this number, you just need to remember that this is the tenths place and this is the hundredths place, and the farthest out that your decimal goes, that is the number that you're going to write it over when you make your fraction. So we're almost done. The only thing you want to do with your fractions is reduce them. And I did already make a video on simplifying or reducing fractions, so feel free to watch that one. But when I look at this number, I automatically see that they're both even. So 2 goes into all even numbers. 2 goes into 26 13 times, and 2 goes into 150 times. So the best fraction for this decimal would be 13 fiftieths. And if you want to double check and take a calculator, you could go 13 divided by 50, and you will end up with 26 hundredths or 0.26. Let's do another. Here is our second one, and if you were to pronounce this the correct way, it'd be 7 tenths. So that is how we're going to write it, 7 tenths. Just remember that this is in the tenths place. We have tenths, we have hundredths, we have thousands, we have hundred thousandths, and that is your denominator when you make it into a fraction. The last step we need to do is reduce, but guess what? This is already reduced, so that is our final answer. Let's do another one. Here we have 8 hundredths, and this 8 is in the hundredths spot. So if I were to write that as a fraction, I would want to write it 8 over 100. My very last step is to reduce, and I think 4 goes into both of these, but I always like working with even numbers because I know 2 goes into both of them. So I'm just going to go that route. 2 goes into 8 4 times, 2 goes into 150 times, and 2 can go into both of those again. 2 goes into 4 twice, and 2 goes into 50 25 times. And there's my final answer, 2 25ths. Let me show you how this would look different. Instead of writing 8 over 100, this 8 is in the tenths spot. So I would write 8 tenths. Then I would just reduce this one, and I would divide both of them by 2 because they're even. So half of 8 is 4, and half of 10 is 5. So this would be the correct fraction for this one. And if you look at these fractions, this one's really, really close to the number 1. And 0.8 or 8 tenths or 80 cents, that is also really close to the number 1 or $1. This one, if you think about having 8 cents, that is a teeny tiny amount of cents. It's not even really close to $1. So when we change it into a fraction, our number should not be close to 1 whole. Okay, this fraction as 1 whole would be 25 25ths, and we only have 2. So that makes sense for that fraction and that decimal to be equal to each other. Let's do a couple more. This number is 145 thousandths. So I am going to write it exactly how I said it, 145 thousandths. My only last step is to, of course, reduce, and both of these numbers, one of them ends in a 0 and one of them ends in a 5, so I know that the number 5 goes into both of these numbers. Now, if I were to count by 5s all the way to 145, I would get that 5 goes in there 29 times. And then 5 goes into 1,000 200 times. And that is my reduced fraction. And remember, if you want to double check, you can just grab a calculator, go 29 divided by 200, because that is what this fraction is saying. And I would get 0.145 or 145 thousandths. Okay, let's do one more. This decimal is greater than 1. So I have part of it out here. So I'm just going to rewrite that as a whole number 2. And I'm going to kind of ignore it when I write this last part as a fraction. This part would be 64 hundredths. So I'm going to write it like this. 2 and 64 hundredths. Now I'm going to do the same thing I do when I reduce, and I just like to cut things in half because I know 2 goes into all numbers that are even. So 2 goes into 64 32 times, and 2 goes into 150 times. And I'm going to keep going since those numbers are still even. 2 goes into 32 16 times. 2 goes into 50 25 times. I can't forget about my 2. So this would be the correct fraction for that decimal. And if we do 16 divided by 25, we should end up with 64 hundredths. I hope that helps. If that made sense to you, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe below. Otherwise, let me know what else you need help with in the comments section, and I would be happy to help you. Bye!